Hey everybody, welcome to this next episode of the Mr. Maple Show.
I'm Tim.
And I'm Brian.
And today we've got an awesome video on Japanese Maple Weirdos Part 2.
This is going to be really cool. I know you guys have already watched the other episode. If you haven't, make sure you go and check it out on our YouTube channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to that as well, because we're putting out a ton of videos. Every day we're out here shooting something, so I know you'll find this interesting.
And yes, we may be Japanese Maple Weirdos, but again, this is about the Japanese maples that are unique and different and stand out from all the other Japanese maples. We really appreciate you watching this video. Please like it. If you have any comments, post those in the comment section. We definitely check those out. Share this with your gardening friends. That's a great way to let other people know about us. We really appreciate that. And as always, sign up for our weekly emails on MrMaple.com. We had 10 new fun, exciting trees every Tuesday, sometimes even 20. So you'll definitely want to be a part of that email.
Hey, I'm Matt, and welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. You know, we had a great response from Japanese Maple Weirdos Part 1, so we're back with Part 2. And we've picked another assortment of trees with some unique characteristics that we think make them stand out and make them be a little bit more of the weirdos of the Japanese maple world.
Japanese maples that are very unique and different stand out in the landscape. And purple curl, Acer palmatum purple curl, is one of those. That's a Japanese maple weirdo for sure. It really has some nice twisting effect with a unique variegation that's often up on a purple leaf that's crumpled almost, and then it goes to like a green with almost like a yellow orange. Very unique, eerie kind of variegation.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this one's sold out by the time the video gets posted. I was actually on the 10 at 10 the day we're shooting the video, so I wouldn't be surprised if this one's gone already, but we will be offering it again. We actually have the original purple curl here at the nursery. It's one we're quite fond of. It's one that only a Japanese maple collector could love. You know, you've heard of a face only a mother could love. Well, this one's one that only a Japanese maple collector will love. It's very unique and interesting. I think it fits the weirdo description perfectly. It's one of the best plants we could think of for the category of weirdo because it's super different, super unique. It has this almost malformation to every single leaf where it has this malting characteristic, dark purple foliage. So we love that about it. You know, we were super excited when Talon first gifted us one of these. We were visiting Talon, I think it was in 2019 maybe, or maybe it was even the year before, but Talon took us to the back and said, I got this really cool one I want you to have, and actually just gave us one. And you know, there's always a special place in your memory for something like that. So
I was geeking out because Talon said, oh, you don't have this one? Let me get you it.
Yeah.
It's one of my new ones. And when he went searching around and didn't see it in one greenhouse and went to the next greenhouse and was putting that much effort into it, I knew it was something
like
special. And it really is, with that sort of crazy cupped curl leaf. Purple curl is a perfect example for a great name because it has that curled leaf on a purple leaf that goes to that green with sort of yellow orange variegation, and then that bright red fall color. We've got some great photos of the fall color on the website as well. And it's such an awesome plant because it's so unique and so different. There's not a lot like it. And that makes it a Japanese maple weirdo for sure.
For sure. It just has this weird contorted, almost like hand look to each leaf, especially as it's leafing out, but then it gets more curling as the leaf forms into that older growth. It's such a unique tree. Like I said, it fits that category of weirdos perfectly because this is a very unique plant. I think the collectors are going to love it because it's something totally different than what's out there. And it's just very unique. I think, you know, and Brian mentioned this the other day, it very well may have some Shirosawinum influence under it as well.
There's a chance.
But I think it's going to be one that makes a really fun complement to Magic Moon when we do have the Magic Moon out there too. But
yeah, I think that's one that's very special and unique. And I think this is one that stands out from our other 1,000 varieties of Japanese maples. I mean, there's not anything else quite like it. And
it's a weirdo for sure.
Yeah.
So next up we have a very unique Japanese maple. We're throwing in this one into the weirdo category just for its uniqueness. It's not often you see a Japanese maple that is a witch's broom and also variegated. Next up we have Acer palmatum Pink Princess.
Yeah, Pink Princess is a witch's broom with a tight, compact habit, but with that pink and white variegated margins on a green leaf. It was found as a witch's broom on Benishishihinga at our friend Carl Munn's place. Carl's a really good friend of ours, and he called us up and said, hey, I've got this broom on a tree growing out one of my fields. And then he sent us wood, we grafted it, and we talked with Carl, and we said, hey Carl, could we name this Pink Princess? And he agreed, and we got it introduced into the nursery trade as a very unique witch's broom. Very, very one of a kind.
Yeah, he sent it to us kind of to evaluate, and he said if you like it enough, maybe you can help me put a name on it originally. And we kind of played around with it for a few years. We were at a plant conference one time, and I believe it was Barry Yinger, who's very knowledgeable on variegated plants for sure. I believe he wrote the foreword, you were saying?
Yeah, he wrote one of the forewords to Dr. Yokoi's variegated plants.
Yeah, so Barry knows his variegated plants, and he posed the question, can anyone think of a variegated witch's broom? And it's very rare in the plant world. I could actually think of two. We had this one, so we cheated because we already had this one in evaluation. I don't think anybody else knew about this one besides Carl. So this is a variegated broom on Bene Shishihinga. So it makes that compact, dense broom habit that you like, that's reminiscent of cultivars like Shana or Tiny Tim, something like that, with that compact, dense habit, but then also on a variegated tree. So very unique in that. The only other one I could think of happened to be Peve Maribo.
Yeah.
That happened to be a broom.
And we love this plant because Bene Shishihinga is actually our logo on MrMaple.com. So if you look at the dot on .com, that's Bene Shishihinga. And so we love Bene Shishihinga. It is a taller tree. It can be very twiggy, but what the difference is that Pink Princess is very short and dense. So it's very, very different and very unique in that respect.
Yeah, people might not know this, but here's a little Mr. Maple trivia for you we'll throw in. Our name's Mr. Maple because it's a nickname people use for our dad. So people used to call Dad Mr. Maple, and that was just something he went by locally, when he was out selling Japanese maples at tailgates. And the Bene Shishihinga is our symbol because it's actually our mom's favorite Japanese maple, so that's why we have that as our logo. That's just a little bit of Mr. Maple trivia for you, though. But what's cool about Pink Princess is it's a broom on that Bene Shishihinga. Makes it a super weirdo. I don't know of another Japanese maple that's both variegated and a broom. So if you can think anything else, if you think of any other variegated brooms, leave that in the comment below, because that's a plant trivia question that's very hard. Ginkgo biloba Peve Maribo is also one that I thought of, but I don't know if I know of any others that are truly a broom, not a sport, but a broom and variegated.
Sherman's Nordic would probably be the only other one.
Yeah. I think we brought that up with Barry too.
Yeah. But there aren't many at all.
Not many, yeah.
And
there's
there's none on maples other than Pink Princess that we currently know of.
Which makes it a super weirdo. Carl had this one growing on a tree there in his in-ground operation, and we were actually really fortunate. One time we were visiting Carl when we gave Carl the Peter Gregory Award. So we were super honored to get to hand that to Carl. Carl's a famous nurseryman who's done so many things. You probably know Moonrise and other of his introductions. That's probably his most famous, especially the one that's getting around Europe even now.
Yeah.
But when we were giving him the Peter Gregory Award from the Maple Society, Carl took us out there and showed us the original broom on Pink Princess, and we got to kind of check that out in person, and it was just super fun to get to see that. We're always suckers for seeing the original of something, and we actually gave him back some of the original graphs that we'd done from it, and he said, guys, if you like this enough, get a name on it. So we tried to get a name that served it for what it was, because we thought this is super unique. I think it was probably around the time I was having my first daughter, and I said Carolina would like a Pink Princess. That's what she would want in her garden.
We started out this video talking about purple curl that has that curling leaf. The next one has a very unique curl as well, but the leaves curl upward. We're talking about Acer palmatum Okushimo.
Yeah, I won't call anybody out by name, but I've had well-known nurserymen and horticulturalists come to our nursery, and I was like, hey, what are you doing? And they grabbed our 3-gallon Okushimo and took it down to the end of the greenhouse, and they were watering it because they thought I'd left that one out of the water and had missed all the water and caused all the foliage to curl up. And I'm like, no, I promise it gets watered. That one actually looks like that. But
yeah, Acer palmatum Okushimo is a green upright with a very narrow habit. But the thing that makes this so unique is those leaves do curl inward, and it almost rolls on itself on the leaf curling inward. That just gives it a very unique shape, and it makes the leaves look almost pointed. But this one also goes to a bold orange in the fall, making this an outstanding fall colored Japanese maple as well that can fit in smaller spaces.
Yeah, it's often golden yellow early to orange lates. With Naruto and Tancho, which are Bajurianum forms that do this, we often talk about those almost looking like origami. And I think it's a fun way to think of this one. It's almost like origami birds in the landscape.
It looks like someone just rolled up the leaf.
It's a very unique foliage for sure. I think it's one that stands out. Definitely had to be in one of our Weirdo videos because it's so unique in the Japanese maple world. And it's another one I think that the collectors love, but is also used in the landscape for that more narrow footprint too.
And this is one of those classic Japanese maples from the 1700s that often isn't get used enough. it's such a beautiful plant, and it's a classic Japanese maple that needs to get used more and more in the landscape. Brian was talking earlier and said the name meant salt and pepper, which is really unique and different.
Fertilize it like that.
But this is a beautiful tree, and it's a Japanese maple weirdo that I think you'll really enjoy. And you can set it out there, and maybe some of your friends coming visiting will be trying to water it behind your back.
So next up, we have another fun weirdo for you. This one has probably gotten out there more as we've tried to popularize it. We had one of the first ones in the country, and I think we actually did a video on this one individually as well. But next up, we're talking about Acer palmatum Peve Starfish. Now, we talked about a foliage that cups up. Well, this is one that distinctly cups downward, and it's one of the most distinct curling, probably the most extreme version of that.
You may see that term peve in front of many of Japanese maples and many other plants, such as the bald cypresses Peve yellow, Peve minaret, Peve maribo on the ginkgos. There's Peve multicolor. There's a lot of Peves you'll find in the nursery trade, and there are selections by Piet Vergelt, and the Peve is from Piet, and the Vergelt is the ve, so Peve. And that's one of the neat things about a lot of his introductions. He puts that Peve name in front of it. Our friend Talon Buchholz was visiting him, as the story goes from Talon, and looked over and said, "That looks like a starfish." And he didn't know it, but Piet Vergelt said, "Huh," and ended up naming it Peve Starfish.
Yeah, a few years later, Talon was visiting him, and he said, "I like that one." He said, "You named that one Starfish." He said, "Oh, cool, I have one named Starfish too," which is what Hitode translates as. So you may have seen us offer Hitode, both meaning starfish, but easy to distinguish with Peve Starfish and Hitode. But both have that distinctive starfish-like foliage, Hitode being the green, and Peve Starfish having that bright, even dark maroon early to then bright reds in the fall. Just an amazing tree that goes through some awesome changes. I said this in our video about Peve Starfish, but it's an easy one to get kids involved in gardening with. Your kids are going to want to love to see any maples or plants that have critters involved in them. And this is one that just, it goes wild with the imagination, because each little leaf looks like a starfish. It truly has the perfect name for what it is. And so it's an easy one that, your grandkid or your kid's going to want to go out and check on and look at that starfish and watch as it changes throughout the season.
Now, new growth on this may be a little flatter, but as that matures, it definitely has more and more of that cupped foliage to it, especially on the older growth.
That's a great point to make. I think we get asked about that every year. People say, "I think my Peve Starfish reverted." And it's typically, July, August. It's that secondary flush of growth that flattens out just a little bit. There's no need to prune that off. There's no need to trim that. It actually hasn't reverted. The newest flush is actually the strongest, and they'll actually be a little flatter.
Yeah.
And as that ages, the older growth will still have that curl. So the next year, that part will curl too. So don't be worried if your Peve Starfish has a few flat leaves on top of it.
And if you're really pushing with a lot of fertilizer, you may even get more flatter leaves, but those leaves will cut back downward over time. Now, Peve Starfish has that unique foliage that gives it a really unique texture on a nice mid-sized tree. One of the things I love about this tree is not only the leaves, but the fact that it's a small to mid-sized upright. It's not going to be a giant red upright Japanese maple very quickly. It takes a long time to get there. And because of that, that means it's an excellent container plant, or if you've got a smaller place in your landscape that you want an upright red Japanese maple, this one can bring one of those Japanese maple weirdo vibes to a smaller space.
For sure. I think it's one you're going to love. You've heard me say this a lot of times, but I love when a tree has just the right name for it. Like, I love a good name with a good plant. And starfish, it perfectly encapsulates what this one is. Like, it really covers that. I think one of the most underrated features of this one is the fall color. It has excellent bold red fall color. I mean, it's like fire engine red in the fall. And it really is a nice palette on that curled foliage. I get out and take as many photos as I can of this in the fall, because I think that's when it's like just premium.
Yeah, the fall color on this is just electric. It's that vibrant red to bold red that just stands out, and is an excellent fall color Japanese maple as well. But again, that cup foliage just gives it something extra unique with that fall color, and I think this is one you're going to really enjoy. Next, we have a Japanese maple that's very unique and very different. This is Acer palmatum Ruby Ridge. The thing that's so special about this one is it's really, people often describe this as being very ploidy. It feels like it has extra chromosomes, which make it have thicker leaves and thicker branches. Acer palmatum Ruby Ridge is really a unique plant with a very thick leaf, thick branches, and more of a brick red color to the leaf that gives it something kind of unique and different.
Yeah, it's probably not seen in the nursery trade that much just because it's extremely slow growing, which many tetraploid plants can be as well. And then one of their, and I don't know for sure it's a tetraploid, somebody can do the testing on that and tell us for sure, but we've often speculated about that because of that thicker foliage too. It's very unique in that the foliage almost has a leathery thickness to it. It feels like no other Japanese maple leaves. It's a very unique one. This one has some really, really dark foliage. It's actually a really, one of the darkest reds, I would say, of any Japanese maple too, especially in the early spring.
Now, J.D. Vertree selected a number of different Japanese maples in the nursery trade. One was Weirdos. Our friend Dan
That could be on the weirdo list as well.
Yeah, it very much could be.
Weirdo.
Our friend Dan Himes of Terra Nova Nurseries is a Japanese maple connoisseur. He loves Japanese maples. He's introduced a number of them, including Everautumn. And Ruby Ridge is a selection that he found as a chance seedling from Weirdos. And
Yeah,
this one had the
Dan's
more
been
red
so
color.
gracious. We got to go out and visit him and see many of the originals of these in one of his gardens. We got to see the original Everautumn there in the garden. And he just gave us a little bit of the backstory about these, but it's an awesome plant. It's one that is, we couldn't do a weirdo video without including a Ruby Ridge. I mean, it's super unique in the maple world. I think the thing that just makes me think, wow, this is just, it doesn't even seem like a Japanese maple is how thick the leaf is. That just looks completely different.
Yeah, it's one that stands out from the crowd, especially with that red color. And it really goes to a really nice orange color in the fall. It gives it something unique, something special, a little yellow to orange infused in there, and gives it something really special with that thicker leaf.
Shout out to Aaron Dragseth. I believe we used some of his photos for that one. Maple Collector on YouTube as well. He has some great photos of Ruby Ridge that kind of just really capture how interesting that one is.
And this one, again, is a slow grower. So it's another mid-sized upright that's going to take a while. You can grow it in a container for a while and enjoy that uniqueness up close with that thicker leaf. And it's one that stands out from the crowd. When you put it out there, people are going to really think that it's something special and something unique because it is.
Yeah. Put that one next to some yellows or some even of the lighter white colors in early spring. It's just going to look unreal. It's going to pair texturally really differently with any Japanese maples because it's such a thick leaf. It just looks different. Almost has that leathery-like look to it. So it looks very different than a lot of the other softer foliage looks of some of the other maples.
And it'll often get more of that brick red color rather than your typical maroon that a lot of other Japanese maples get, which gives it something unique for that thicker leaf, this thicker branching, and that smaller stature.
Yeah, very slow growing. It's one we really, we thought of if we're going to do a part 2 to Weirdos, we've got to include that one in there. So we're ready to do our round table discussion at our square table on Japanese Maple Weirdos part 2. We put together another small collection here of just ones we thought stand out from your normal Japanese maples. I mean, none of these are ones you're going to see at the big box stores. There's certainly the outside the box collector piece maples that are a little weirder than what you normally see in a standard collection. So that we think they kind of stand out. So of these Weirdos, Tim, which one do you think's the weirdest?
I'm going to let you answer that first because I have to think. I mean, I could go with so many different ones here as the weirdest. And I could go.
There's some weird options here.
What's your weirdest pick?
Okay, so I think it has to be Pink Princess only because there's no other witches brooms that are variegated. I think that makes it the most unique, but maybe not the most weird. I think that it's its own category. So if you made a category of variegated witches broom Japanese maples, that's it. But if you said what is the just weirdest one, probably going Purple Curl. It's the weirdest. Like, it looks weird.
Yeah. Purple Curl's definitely one that's very weird and stands out from a lot of other Japanese maples. You put up with other Japanese maples, people are going to say, what's going on with this one? Because it's got some funky variegation going on, which really makes it stand out, doing something very unique, very different. I'm going to go with Peve Starfish because that leaf is just so cupped downwards that it may not necessarily be the super weirdest, but it's my favorite of the weirdest.
Okay, well, I was going to ask what your favorite is next, so I guess we know.
That is Peve Starfish with that cupped foliage that it's just so heavily cupped. I mean, it just cups so much. It looks so unique, so different. It looks animal-like.
Yeah.
And that's really where that Starfish name plays so well with it. Gives some good color. And and the fact that we've been growing it for so long, I've just enjoyed it, seeing it every season.
It's definitely one of the favorites on the table for the customer. I would say Purple Curls hasn't been available as often, so it sells out the fastest. But Peve Starfish is probably the most popular of this group.
We probably sold the most of that one than anyone else in this group.
Yeah, whenever it's up, it's consistent. I mean, it's one that's always popular. If I were going with my favorite on the table, it's a hard pick. There's definitely three that I'm like really like a lot. Again, it would probably either be Pink Princess or Purple Curl. I like Purple Curl probably the most just because it's so weird. I mean, it looks like nothing else. I'm pretty excited to plant the original one in one of our display gardens this year, and I just think it looks super cool. It just doesn't look like anything else. So, I mean, right now that may be my favorite, but if you ask me in a year, I could easily say Pink Princess. I love Pink Princess, that it's a real dense one, and I just like that it's unique and that it's a broom and variegated. That's hard to beat a broom that's variegated.
I know, that's also why I was thinking about what would be my favorite from the weirdest, and it is a hard choice.
Yeah.
Because Purple Curl, Pink Princess, Peve Starfish, those are all on some of my top lists.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
Ruby Ridge is a great candidate for weirdest. I mean, it's out there as far as like different traits. I mean, not a lot looks like that in Acer. I mean, at all. So.
And then it's hard to beat a 1700s Japanese maple. I mean, it's one of the first Japanese maple weirdos.
Yeah, that might be the earliest weirdo. So
it really stands out, really unique and different, and was selected years ago for being a weirdo.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, this thing looks really unique with the curled foliage.
Mm.
And people have seen those weird traits and have continued them for hundreds of years. So that's pretty cool in itself as well. With these Japanese maples we have here, they're obviously pretty weird and different. Is there anything that you think match better together from these five?
You know, if I were pairing these up, I would probably start with Pink Princess just because it's so different and it's dwarf and it gives you some variegation on there, so it's going to be more starkly contrasted. You know, if I were going with these, I always think of pairings a lot of times in containers, and so I would pair Pink Princess with Peve Starfish in a container garden. I think those are both interesting textures, completely different leaf shapes, completely different looking, but they both bring a lot to the table, especially for that patio garden.
Now, I was thinking pairing two, starting with Peve Starfish, one of my favorites, like I mentioned earlier, but pairing the leaf that cups downward with the leaf that cups upward.
Yeah.
With Okushimo, because then you've got green contrasting with red, textures contrasting, and then yellow to orange and fall color contrasting with the red. So if you're looking for some uprights that don't have to have a very big space because Okushimo is pretty narrow, Peve Starfish doesn't get too big, those pair exceptionally well. But then again, you could also pair Okushimo with Purple Curl and give some really unique traits there as well.
I think Okushimo and Peve Starfish would be one of the more fun fall color pairings, especially, you know, in ground with these. But the Okushimo is going to really play off those colors. I think both those may be the two most striking fall color maples on the table. But there's a lot of fun ways to do some pairings here for sure. So I've brought in Brian. I think you're an expert on weirdos.
I am an expert on weirdos. I'm probably the biggest weirdo of them all, but that's for another day. So.
Yeah, we love these plants, and you know, we joked that we were the weirdos. I think that was the big joke when people clicked on the video. They were expecting it to be like, yeah, Matt and Tim and Brian are the weirdos.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
But of these Japanese maple weirdos, I'll ask first, which is your favorite? Maybe not even of ones you've had before, but which one strikes your fancy the most?
Well, I mean, I hadn't really even heard of it until I came here, but the Purple Curl.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. I had the Magic Moon.
Oh yeah.
Which you know, every time I posted anything about that,
I think you've got everybody drooling.
You know, everybody goes crazy every time I mention it.
Shout out to Alan.
Shout out to Alan. But the Purple Curl kind of gives you that same concept, but just totally gnarly and this weird looking foliage. I mean, it's crazy for sure. Like, that's something that I definitely want to get in my collection.
So of these, are there any of these that you were growing in your Oklahoma garden?
Yeah, I grew several of these. I grew the Peve Starfish, Okushimo, and the Pink Princess.
Oh, cool.
The Okushimo was probably one of my favorites that I grew.
Yeah, yeah.
I had quite a large one. It was probably about 7 feet tall and only about 3 foot wide.
Yeah.
So it was kind of this very, like, this tower, and just those leaves, especially if you get under it a little bit,
Yeah.
it does kind of give that bird, like you were talking about, that bird look.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, if you could just kind of see those leaves from underneath, it really gave it a really cool look to it. The fall color was also amazing, going to that yellow to orange. It was just this golden tower standing back there behind everything in my garden. So
It was kind of a unique one. I liked always having it at garden shows because people either loved it or they didn't.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, then you're not in the club.
Right.
Like, people understood how weird it was. And
you're
unique
not
it was.
weird enough.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was like, if you understood and appreciated that one, it's like, I know we're going to get along good with maples right there.
Absolutely.
Today's video on Japanese Maple Weirdos Part 2 really is something I really enjoy. I like those trees that are very weird, very unique, very different, and stand out from the other Japanese maples. And I think each of these do that in their own way. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I think this is something that anyone can enjoy in their garden. Any of these trees are something that brings that unique flair to the garden that stands out and is something very weird and different.
So yeah, we hope you guys have been enjoying these videos. If you are, make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. That's a great way for us to continue to put this content out there, knowing you guys are watching. So we appreciate that. And these Japanese maple weirdos, I think, are something everybody needs in their garden for sure.
And as always, make sure to sign up for our weekly emails on MrMaple.com. We had 10 new fun, exciting trees every Tuesday at 10 a.m. And you can sign up for those emails, be notified when any of these new plants are coming out. And as always, if you want to support our channel, make sure to shop on MrMaple.com and share this with your gardening friends. Take care.
God bless.
And have a great day.
All you have to do to get involved in the giveaway is like, subscribe, and share our video. Then under every single video you want, you can go and comment, I dig Mr. Maple. And every single time you comment, you'll be entered to win a Mr. Maple hat. So we're going to be doing a giveaway for one of these hats. We're coming up on 8,000 subscribers. Get involved.